Happy
How
Wednesday.
are you?
Okay, so I'm so excited. I know I need to speak it because you're in the middle of it. I am going to call you something that isn't listed because your name listed below is Naim Sanders. However, Naim is going for his doctorate. So we're soon to be Dr. Sanders. And this has been a long time in the making.
Thank you so much. First of all, I received those positive words of affirmation. And definitely we'll keep that in mind as I continue to take this journey and do the work and salute to everyone who's earned that because it is not easy.
No, no, it's not. It's not easy. We've been connected for so long. I'm so excited to have you on Healing Our Future and welcome everybody who's joining us, whether you're part of Team Live or part of Team Replay. This is a sweet, a bittersweet, because you and I are both in education in some form and fashion. So before we dive into it, I know there's some parents or maybe grandparents or people in the community who are feeling a mixed of emotions because I know some schools have either one ended or are ending this week or next week. And I know when summer is coming, people might feel really excited or, oh my gosh, what do I do with my
Right,
kids? And they
right,
don't
right.
realize all that goes in to the students being in the school during the day of helping to guide kids to their success and
Right.
thriving. So, before we get into talking more about wellness and your own personal journey and our schools, what I am hoping that you can share with the audience that is watching is a little bit of who you are. I know you right now to be an assistant superintendent. However, that wasn't always what you were, and you had a long journey in education. So, while I know you of writing books from your personal experiences, they're listed below. Go check them out, everyone. From a perspective of a black male, which is super important because we only have 2% of educators who are even in this space who are black male educators. So, can you just give the audience a little bit about of who you are and your journey?
My journey actually to become an educator started when I was in high school. When I was a senior, we had the opportunity to participate in volunteering, and so I
Mhm.
volunteered my time at a local elementary school. And to be honest with you, when I was in the classroom, it felt natural. Now I went to that local elementary school because it was close by, but it
Mhm.
just really felt natural being in the classroom, being around students, and plus, I've always been someone who actually liked learning, love learning, and so why not leave if you don't have to, right? And so
Yeah.
went on to college to major in elementary education, received my bachelor's, and then entered the teaching profession very soon afterwards. So I remember my first year as a classroom teacher, the principal telling me, "Hey, one day you're going to be a principal." And I thought, no way. I don't even want those problems, right? And so that following year, during my second year, I went and obtained my master's. And after 3 years of teaching, went into administration. And
Mhm.
so I started off for 9 years in charter schools. And then after that, I spent the rest of my career really in traditional school districts. Was been a principal for about 18 years, and then
Mhm.
had the opportunity this year to serve as assistant superintendent in the school district. And then prior to that, I would get so many stories and have the opportunity to hear some of the challenges and see firsthand a lot of the challenges that educators face. And so I captured those challenges with solutions and just reflections in two books. One being the beautiful struggles of teaching, because in my opinion, that's what teaching is. It's beautiful, but let it be known it is a struggle in a lot of cases, and that comes with it. And then the second one I wanted to do was peel back the layer to not only look at just teaching, but also include culture, to also include leadership, and then really point out and try to hit home how sacred, when you look at the institutions of education, it really is a sacred place. You don't
Mhm.
have too many places, probably other than religious institutions, where so many people come together with so many values and so many belief systems, all under with the intention to learn and to receive an education in a safe, nurturing environment. So that's why it's called a sacred place for learning. And then if that wasn't enough, future, I just thought, why not try to get a doctorate degree? so so I'm in the process of writing my dissertation along with writing another book. So we'll see how that goes.
Okay, do you want to share the, a little snippet of what your dissertation is about or focusing on, or it's a secret?
Yep. Yep. So my dissertation is to focus on instructional leadership between
Mhm.
high poverty schools and low poverty schools. And so the
Mm,
intent is to take the role of a principal in a high poverty school and low poverty school. What are some of the differences in terms of instructional leadership? If there are any gaps, how those gaps can be closed, and really use that to train and prepare principals to lead effective schools.
that's good. That's good. What I think about when you say the dissertation of instructional leadership, and because you were a principal for 18 years, so if you put your hat on from years ago, in more recent years, maybe in
Mhm.
the last definitely COVID on, and even before that, I would say maybe 5 years, possibly
Right.
10 years, there's been an increased emphasis. What the role of what a principal or assistant principal looked like
Mhm.
10, 15 years ago. And as we get closer to 2023, has more or less put what I see, and I'd love to hear your opinion, more emphasis on being an instructional leader rather
Mhm.
than just being a leader in that building to guide people in regards to behaviors and to do a few evaluations. It is heavily focused on instruction. And I saw it of if you weren't a strong instructional leader, especially when the kids were coming back or during COVID, then you're going to be tested because
Right.
there was even more gaps than we already had.
And instructional leadership has always been a big part of it, right? I think what we've learned now over the past decade is how many other things are connected to instructional leadership. So students aren't going to learn academically if they're not behaving appropriately. Students aren't going to learn academically if they don't have a trusting relationship with an adult. Students aren't going to learn academically if they don't necessarily there's not culturally relevant instructional practices in the classroom. So what we've learned over time, even since COVID, when you talk about social and emotional learning, that can be added to that too. We've learned that instructional leadership is just a part of the puzzle. There,
Yeah.
there are many extensions from it that we've had to pay attention to over the course of years, and that really since COVID have stood out more. Where we begin
Mhm.
to, we begin to look at trauma more. We begin to look at, again, like I said, social emotional learning more. We begin to look at all these other factors that impact students because
Mhm.
years ago, probably before your time and my time, it was about you just come to school, you're learning, and then you're going home, right? Well, that's not the case anymore. There's so many other things, so many other needs that we're aware of that have to be addressed, whether we like it or not, at the schools. And then there are family issues and dynamics that go into it too. So I think we've become sophisticated in recognizing the unique needs of our students and
Mhm.
families, and we're still striving to work with solutions. We've increased innovation, but then there's also some things that stay the same as far as just having high standards, building
Yeah.
relationships. Those things are being constant that probably won't ever go away. We're just,
Yeah.
I think we're more cognizant of it and we're beginning to name it better.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I love all that. What I do know is your face, seeing your face makes me happy. And it makes me happy because for so many reasons. One of the, you're probably like, what are you going to say, future? Okay. It makes me happy because here's the reality. You and I both know because we've had many conversations over the
Right,
years.
right, right, right,
You have children, I have children, and the reality is we know firsthand from being in education for over 2 decades what it looks like in many different places.
right,
And you being a male is not common. That's not the norm. And essentially, as a black male, I think there's 2% black male educators. And
right.
you and I both know, which the audience may not know, educators are leaving the profession of education,
Yep,
especially in the last 3 years since COVID.
yep,
However, now tack on to that being black in the education system, they are leaving at higher rates too.
right,
So this is a major concern, and seeing you makes me happy because there's a lot of males in education that we're teaching and essentially black males. So to see you, and that's why I asked the question on the post that I recently did, when was your first black male educator? Or if you didn't have a black male educator, when was your first black male leader? So I'm turning the tables. You are that model for so many people. Okay. They get to say, Mr. Sanders is my first, was whether that was the first 3 years in the classroom or as a principal and the leader. So the question I have for you is, when was your first male Black leader or teacher?
Yeah, what's interesting, my I did not have a black male teacher until high school. It was my junior year. I hope maybe he's listening. His name was Mr. Reeves. He actually is serving as a assistant superintendent in a neighboring district. But
Mhm.
he was my first black male teacher, and
Okay.
was just extraordinary in regards to how he taught, and then even just going above and beyond in building relationships with students. As I attended a predominantly black high school, so
Okay.
I didn't have the opportunity to see someone as a black male educator until I got to high school.
Mhm.
In fact, outside the home, it was really all my coaches primarily were black, in little league and part of high school. But those were those interactions versus just being a black male teaching academics, right? So
Yeah.
I think that was unfortunate, but at the same time, so many other youth who are attending schools experience that too. So
Right?
that's really, um, we have to do better and find ways to do better, because
Mhm.
I do think that there's that connection when students are able to see someone
Right.
like them who are educating them and taking personal interest in them based upon who they are as well.
Mhm.
So I think that increases the motivation to learn, and then also sets the tone that that idea that maybe one day it's something they want to do too. So if students are constantly being involved and they don't see representation in groups, it's kind of hard for them to go down that road of thinking that, hey, maybe I can do that too. And for
Right.
some people, maybe opposite. Some may feel, because I didn't see it, and maybe that draws them to wanting to do the profession. But I think it's just imperative that we definitely have more black male representation in the field of education, especially at the elementary school level.
Mhm. Now, then that makes me think, and this could be a dissertation. I am not signing up to do it. I'm just saying, "Oh, get out there,
Never know.
Dan.
Never know.
You going for a PhD? Hear me out." That then begs me to really sit with. I have so many thoughts in my mind. This is what I do during the day. Okay. One of my thoughts is, if we had more Black male teachers and more Black teachers in general, would our numbers of the data, whether it's state data or nation data, with our report cards and academics, with expulsions, with suspensions, with the Black students, be different? Because you and I both know, because we know the data all too well, we are, I don't want to put a label of failing.
Mhm,
There is plenty of opportunities that we're not seeing time and time again nationwide in any school district with our Black children. And then, more specifically, if I wanted to disaggregate the data, Black male students and Black male students that also have a diagnosis and have an IEP.
mhm. And I agree, and I think what ends up happening, and again, we know this. There's a body of research out there that
Mhm.
shows that all students' achievement increases when they're
Correct.
exposed to black educators. Right? Again, there's a body of research. That's not my just opinion.
Mhm.
Um, I think what ends up happening is when you increase the number of black male educators, it creates opportunities to identify. And so, even as adult learners, it's not only sometimes whether we're engaging in education, it's not just the lessons that are being taught, but we're also very in tune to the teacher.
Mhm.
And so, students themselves are the same way when they're learning from individuals who may be, that look like them,
Mhm.
have similar characteristics, that may have similar experiences, that are sensitive to their cultural needs, that understand their cultural differences and values, and that are open to exposing them to learning more about who they are too.
Yeah.
So I think those are just some of the positives that you get when you have a black male educator, and not only that, but just knowing that what could be diagnosed as a disability could
Mhm.
essentially be something that could be used to propel a child to be successful. It's
Correct.
teaching them how to use that. And so I do think that the value of having black male teachers it's just essential, right? And so I would charge or welcome any opportunity to really work together to figure out how can we increase that pipeline. And I
Yeah.
really think there's some organizations out there who are doing it, but just being creative in regards to what can we do to attract more to the field of education, not only just teaching, but teaching, school leadership, and then also district leadership as well.
Because I know I hear a lot of people, and I don't know if this has been your experience. My experience in education has often been I am the first or the only one that was sitting in the classroom as a teacher or as a leader. And that's a hard ask for any
Right,
human being to
right,
like say, here, raise your hand and want to be the only one, because the reality is when we are the only one or one of few, it, I am not coming in just as a teacher
right,
or as a educational leader. I am coming in as a beacon of hope for that
right,
child, because
right,
now you have all these children who, the beauty of it, right? You said it's a beautiful struggle, that are like, oh, Mr. Standers, like I see myself in you. So I feel confident, comfortable coming to talk to you more so than some of the other people. And at the same time, then we get not only the students coming, the parents and families also feel more comfortable sometimes. And you also have the teachers that are coming, I don't have to deal with this kid. So now you have another job added on to your list of things to do that you're not getting paid for of. Now, on top of all the students that you have to serve and deal with, you're going to fix this kid because that's what I think needs to happen, instead of us having an understanding for being culturally responsive and seeking to understand and building relationships with our students so that you don't have to go to somebody else. You could do it yourself. So when I think about that, I think about this show and healing in our own wellness, because there is a toll. There's a toll of being
yeah,
the only one, especially as you and I talked about. As you get higher up on that ladder, there's fewer of us.
right.
And in spaces where there's less, that is tolling on a being. So I guess the question that I have for you is, with all the beauty that you've brought to the different school districts that you've worked in for over 2 decades in the many different levels, what has been the struggle then with your own wellness?
Right. I think, when I first got into education, I had the sole intent of saving the world, right? That's not realistic, right?
Mhm.
Um, so you definitely have to be realistic in regards to what your capabilities are
Yeah.
and understand that you may save some, you may not. You may
Okay.
plant the seed, you may not. That won't deter you or shouldn't deter you from giving your best and
Yeah.
doing what you can for all children. But it's being realistic. And sometimes, as a Black male educator, especially teaching in schools that have a high population of African American students, it's that desire and need to want to save not just the kids in your classroom, but all the kids in the school. And so you do place a heavier burden on yourself internally. And then I think that is compounded by what's also added from external factors, from that could be from colleagues or from administration. As a Black male educator, I remember getting students sent to my classroom that were from different classrooms around the building. I mean, they would bypass the office to be sent to my
Yep.
as a form of punishment. But what I end up doing is just using it as a form to build relationships.
Mhm.
So in education, we call that double taxation, where
Yeah.
you are expected to do the job in which that's on your job description, but you're also expected to do more
Yeah.
because of your gender and because of your race. And that's just the expectation that a lot of Black educators, and male and female, take on. And we take on it willingly because there's so few of us.
Yeah.
But in the end, it has its toll on all of us, right? So
Yeah.
it's imperative that really, as an educator, for you to be able, you have to balance that. You have to decide how much you want to take on, and because you can't be everything all the time for everyone. But again, there have been instances where I've worked with students outside of school, taking them football games, done different activities with them. And there's been times when I have been able to, at being able to raise my own family. So I
Yeah.
think it's imperative that you have to find that balance and let yourself know that give yourself some grace and let yourself know it's not perfect, but it's going to be okay. And it's really imperative that you find that peace for yourself in the work that you do, right? um
Mhm.
because we already know it's great work to be done as it is.
That makes me think of peace above perfect.
Yes, I love that. I love that.
Peace above perfect, because here's the reality. There is a toll, like a heavy bricks that we wear on our as a knapsack all the time,
Right.
of we want to save and we want to serve. And if we don't come in, then who? Especially if you are one of the only or
Right.
the only, it is an even heavier toll that you carry, because you see all these children and these families that you've built relationships with. I always teach the 3 R's, and it's, if I can build a relationship with, then I
Mhm.
can establish relevancy, and then I could get to rigor in any classroom, because I
Right.
know the students. But there's so many people who are just getting to the academics and then not tapping into the social emotional piece, not tapping into building that awareness and the relationships to truly help the students thrive as much as we know that they can.
Right. Learning is most effective when it's connected, right?
Mhm.
In order to connect to your students, whether it be in elementary school, middle school, or high school, there has to be that relationship component where you understand where your students are coming from.
Correct.
Once you're able to understand your students' experiences and see life through a lens in which they view, you can make a connection to even some of the experiences that kids are having
Mm.
or will have. And even if they won't have them, you've given them the tools to prepare them for when they do. But that can't come unless you've taken time to really build that relationship and begin to understand. Oftentimes, you'll see educators jump into an aspect of wanting to get right into academics because they feel pressured by the test scores and where's where the reading levels and all those other things. And that's not to say that won't come, because those things are important, have its place. But when those students know that you're invested in them as people, then they'll automatically gravitate to the learning.
Yeah.
But until they know that you care about them, it could be September through December and they haven't connected because you haven't connected as an educator. So I really think it's important for, educators to begin to invest and learn how to cultivate and build those healthy relationships to connect that learning to make it meaningful. Thus being able to grow the minds of students. We're not just preparing them for the next grade level. Hopefully we're preparing them for a better quality of life through the choices and decisions that they make from the education that they receive.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes. And that's why we continue to serve.
Absolutely.
When I think of all this, because obviously, as much as I would love to talk for 30 more minutes, we don't have that this time. I know Dan's like, "Can we do a part 2?" Of course we can. In the next season,
Absolutely.
right? We can. What
Absolutely.
advice would you give to, one, other Black male educators or educational leaders? And we're all, I want to clarify, because people are like, I'm a leader. Yes, we are all leaders in our own regard. So when I talk about educational leaders, I'm talking about the system and the title that has been given, because you're leading in your own classroom already. You're leading in your own community already. So, what would be advice that you would say, hey, other Black male educators and educational leaders, I see you. Here's some advice for your own healing or your own wellness in order to stay in the game, because the kids need you. What would be
Yeah.
one piece of advice?
If I could go back to, Naim 20 25 years ago, right? I would tell him, give yourself some grace.
Okay.
And so I'd send that message out to all current educators right now. Give yourself some grace. The work is plentiful in what we are called to do.
Mm.
And the work is worth it. It's a struggle. But give yourself some grace in knowing that you're not perfect. Approach each day as a new day,
Mm.
with a fresh start and being able to truly make a difference in the lives of others. One of the beautiful things I think about having the opportunity to educate kids is you're doing a job that's greater than you, right? What better purpose and calling is there to be able to do something that's greater than self, right? Even outside of your family. And so with that, there's going to be some days where you're just tired. Get some
Mhm.
rest. I heard a saying a long time ago, there wasn't a such thing as balance. People say live a balanced life. I think you
Mhm.
have to live a prioritized life. So have your priorities in order, knowing that you're a priority, and have
Right.
that in order for the journey that you're taking. And make sure above all things that you realize this journey in life, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So pace
Mhm.
yourself accordingly. The work as an educator, I'm biased, but it's the greatest work ever that you can have. Um, doesn't pay as much, but
No.
it's the greatest job that you can have. Enjoy the process, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we get so stressed and downhearted that we don't take time to enjoy, to laugh, to reflect, to realize that we didn't get it all right, but we still did a good job, and we keep coming back. So there's so many positive takes, and I always tell people, no, as an educator, you're gonna live forever
Mhm.
because your story about you will be shared with your students, who will be shared with their children, who will be shared with their children.
Mhm.
Teachers have a way of living for eternity.
Well, that was what the post showed. People were literally naming their teachers from kindergarten.
Right. Wow.
Kindergarten. They
Yeah.
still knew names from kindergarten and what they taught. So
That's
there's
powerful.
imprints we leave. That's it's so powerful. We leave imprints and in good ways and not so good ways, whether it's intentional or unintentional.
Right.
So
Right.
teachers and human beings are very powerful in general. I think of this book, The Sacred Place for Learning, because I think one of the things that I would remind educators and anybody in the education space is you're a sacred place too,
Yes, you are.
in
Very
your
good.
mind, in your body, and your spirit. And if you're not treating yourself as a sacred place, it is going to be close to impossible for others who are sharing space with you in the classroom, in the school building, in the district, in the community to see what you cultivate as a sacred place because you're not showing up as sacred and treating yourself that way too.
Absolutely. If you try, a matter of fact, if I name my next book "The Sacred Teacher," I'm going to give you credit. Okay. Just saying.
Okay.
You just named it. You're onto something right there.
I'll do a forward. I'll do a forward for you.
I love it. I love it.
Oh, okay. Dion, I want to just ask you because you were like, I have 8 million questions. Do you
Y-
have any questions you want to ask Dr. Sanders before he leaves?
Honestly, I don't think it would be on point, or at least on context of this conversation. I have so many questions to ask about the correlation between education, specifically secondary education, and preparation for the job force, and other things that get in the way of getting closer to narrowing the gender and racial wealth gap.
Mm,
But because the context is a little bit outside of what you're talking about right now,
Yeah.
I think it's probably better to wait. Naeem, I just want to thank you again publicly because this is such an important topic. And you know, I posted in the chat, we can't have a conversation about education without acknowledging others that we've had on, like Dr. Nadia Lopez, that do this in the field. Um, and dare I say that our show between you and Dr. Nadia Lopez have two of the greatest examples of black educators that I've ever seen in my life.
Thank you.
thank you. That's awesome, Dan.
And Dion, feel free to give me a call anytime. I would love to have that conversation, and we could talk more.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I would appreciate that. I know how hard getting a hold of you is. So so we'll definitely figure that out, but I am grateful to you. For everybody watching, where can they find your book? Is it through your website? What's the best case for them?
Yep. Please feel free to go to the website, www.naimqsanders.com, and order, and I will gladly send you some copies.
And I, if people are looking, you know, we're about, before we wrap up, to do a quick segment where we showcase where to find Future and I for future conversations, pun non intended. If somebody says, "Hey, I really love hearing this guy," do you have a podcast? Do you have a list of events that you're speaking at? Where can people really find you?
I don't have any right now, but if you go to my website, there's an opportunity where you can leave a comment. And if you're interested in any way having me as a speaker or engaging in more conversations or any type of professional development, please make that known. And then I will gladly reach out to you and follow up. My email address also is Naim, Naim Sanders at gmail.com.
Mhm,
Thank you for
mhm.
sharing that. I know it's going to go a long way. If you're tuning in late to this broadcast, I will be replaying it live. We'll also be sharing snippets of it throughout the weeks. Also, one other thing is when Future and I go on our summer break, because like educators, we're taking a mental health break during the summer, although we don't get paid for it. We do have all of our episodes available on YouTube, on podcast. Just search for Healing Our Future, and you'll be able to see every episode so far for season 2. Eventually, I'll work on getting season 1 on there as well.
Okay. Thank you, Dan. And then Naeem, if you have a couple minutes to stay after to chat, we would
Of
love to. After we do a run through. And like we said, everybody, you could connect with Naeem, send him a question. I know you're super busy because obviously, as assistant superintendent, you're working all year round. But I
Right.
know, right? I know if people give you at least heads up notice, then
Yeah,
you could work with your schedule
absolutely.
after school. Okay. That's awesome. Thank you, Dan. Did you want to move to what is coming up for everybody? Because I want to make an announcement of we won't be here next week. Okay. So Dan and I will not be here next week. We have 2 more weeks then after I come back. We will not be here next week because I am headed to Seattle. If you're in Seattle, or if you're going to the NANOG conference, please let me know. I will be on stage at the opening remarks and then also moderating a breakout session. So if you are coming, love to see you and meet you. And then later at the end of this month, something near and dear to my heart is the World Affairs Seminar. And that is a seminar that literally we are up to 30 different countries of students that are coming worldwide for the seminar. And this year's topic is climate change. I will be speaking at that as an evening keynote and doing a session. So if you are in education and you've never heard of this before, people send their students from all over the United States and all over the world. You probably want to look at this, whether it's this year or next year, because it's a place where we know our students are going to be our future leaders. And this is a space where yearly students get together to talk across the world, to see many different views, and to meet new friends and build friendships that last a lifetime. So I would ask everybody to check out the World Affairs Seminar. And if you have questions, please feel free to let me know. Dan, turning it over to you.
Yeah, so I don't have any speaking engagements up here right now, everyone. However, um, if you are interested in the work that I specifically do on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, I am in the process of putting out a 6-week series. That's my personal DEIB playbook that I used in corporate at the top levels of corporate. We've gone over everything from ERG partnerships to building representative interview panels, diversity sourcing, and then yesterday I talked about furthering education. Next week, we're going to be discussing leadership buy-in, and that at the end of that, I'm going to be hosting and facilitating an event in which I bring different leaders from across the globe together to have a conversation on DEIB in corporate. So that is where you could find me at the moment. And then once we go on break for the summer, I'm probably going to be bringing my show back for a couple of episodes. Those that know me know that I do events more than weekly episodic. So stay tuned for that. I'm still working on it. But for now, I appreciate you. Did you want to do that announcement real quick, or do we want to go outro?
The announcement for upcoming summer for social emotional learning.
Yes, hold on one second.
Okay, I appreciate you. So this year, August, there is a conference that is held yearly, and it's in Massachusetts. So it is called the SEL School Consultants. You could look that up, and there's an institute with many beautiful minds in regards to the social emotional learning space that will be presenting. I am one of the breakout sessions, so If you are in a school or you're educational, we talked about this earlier on the show. Social emotional learning is a huge piece of building the relationships. So we would love to see you there as an individual or groups. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. But I am excited to be a part of this too. Beginning first week of August, this is. So we will see you in Massachusetts then. Thanks, Dan.
You're welcome. So we're going to go into the outro. We will see you in 2 weeks. I'm really excited about our next guest, Crystal Johnson. I want to be careful because I know she prefers that we go by certain things that she does, but she has a DEI company that she spearheads. Just a truly amazing person. So we'll see you in 2 weeks for that, but you're going to see the follow up. Bear with me 1 second. We're going to go with the outro, and then Naim will have a few minutes to talk afterwards. Thank you all for being here. Please keep in mind that education, especially when it comes to Black educators, is a rarely talked about thing. If you find the power in it, please share this with others. It's not about Future and I, it's about educating others on the education. My daughter needs to be quiet for a second.
I'm
Um,
here.
that means that my wife is tugging me. So, okay, so let's get ready to go.